once the COVID started, more or less everyone panicked, and I'm speaking about the business side of the world. And it's also not the best time when you want to spend money. Finding yourself a good partner and a lot of advisors and mentors, especially if that's your first time building a startup.
So, hello everyone, my name is Agata Walenowska and here we are in Startup Stories podcast. Today my special guest is Krzysztof Wróbel, CEO and founder of Virbe startup, which create an interactive 3D avatar. So, hello Krzysztof, how are you today?
Hey, hello everyone. I'm good, as usual.
Thank you
As a
for
business
being
owner, you have
here.
to be, 100% game all of the time. It's like, definitely worth to be a very positive person in general.
That's great. Thank you for being here and taking part in our podcast. So I think that we can start with the first question. What does Verb Startup do?
So yeah, so you already started it right off. So it's about like interactive conversational avatar that can communicate with customers. So basically, this is like an interface layer between businesses and customers. That's, let's say, in general, but it's more or less about like how we try to add a bit more human touch to this like AI automated world. So probably all of you heard about like ChatGPT. Obviously, this is like a really nice, interesting app to use, sometimes even useful or too useful. But at the same time, it's still not yet the product that kind of like businesses know how to use and operate. So the general, thing that actually started is like, actually, okay, the world right now is experimenting how to eventually use a bit more AI in sometimes very mundane and needed places, because as you can imagine, there are a lot of industries which sometimes lack enough human power. So that's obviously where we want to add like a bit of AI, at least. Anything, if you are waiting too long in a queue in a call center, or maybe in a shop or anywhere else, then you might want to, okay, instead of waiting, perhaps I can talk to the virtual being, or to talk to the chatbot in general. But our place in this whole, let's say, automated or automating world is just making it a bit more human with our digital humans, like the one that you see behind my back.
Yeah, so we see one of your product behind you. So I would like to know, what kind of technology do you use to create such avatars?
So there are three main components. So obviously, I already mentioned conversational AI. So this is obviously something that sits at the bottom, and more or less any kind of like chatbot of today or conversational AI, including ChatGPT or ChatGPT like models, they can be transformed into virtual being. Once you also add the second layer, which is like a voice layer, so speech recognition, speech generation, and at the top, it's obviously the visual part. So the avatar that we generate, this is like not like a deep fake based videos, right? So something actually that kind of like fake it, but we actually render this avatar in 3D. There are a lot of opportunities to actually change the avatar dynamically, to make him sneeze or wave. You can actually control with this approach, you can actually control every aspect of the, let's say, the visual part.
Okay, so what does the process of creating avatar like that look like, that the avatar would like a little bit like a human and have all his behavior like it's the look like the process look like?
Yeah, so I know this question is actually about, probably eventually, whether you can clone yourself or not. So I will go back to that in a moment, meaning eventually, how to create an avatar that, yeah, you can even like clone yourself. But more or less just want to emphasize like the mission that we have, which is not necessarily substituting human, to actually going for 100% accuracy of a person or anything like that, but more about like augmenting your human stuff, your human team. So the visual part, actually, we often tend not to go too much into the this 100% resemblance, because also this is much more fair for customers if they know that they are talking to a virtual being or the digital human, not the real human, right? So we have those kind of like voice calls which are not almost now indistinguishable from the humans. when you use deepfake video, it's also sometimes you don't know anymore whether it's like a human or like an AI or any kind of like fake video being made. So speaking said that, just wanted to make sure, because sometimes people ask those questions about how to get like a 100% accurate clone, but it's better to just make sure that that it's used properly, and the place of the digital human and the technology that we provide has its own place. So it's not substituting, it's just augmenting.
Okay.
But coming back to your question, so obviously there are a lot of tools today that you can use to actually get yourself a 3D avatar, a 3D model of yourself. And it's as simple as just scanning, using iPhone, your face, and then you can actually start, you can import it into the software, and then you can get like almost like 100% accurate version of a person, for instance, right? So this is like something that's one approach to the problem. Apart from that, there is a lot of creators. So I don't know if any of the listeners, they know like a Sims game like builders. So you have like a sliders where you can just change the facial features, where you can change clothing. So those two are actually already available. But if you just do the avatar part, this is obviously just a 3D model. Maybe you can put it into a game, but there is not much you can do with it. That's eventually where the verb comes from. So it actually automatically animates this kind of avatar. So this is where when it comes to visuals. So I would say visuals are almost figured out. So it's kind of like, depending on how much time you want to spend and effort, you can get like almost 100% copy of a person, but it's just, depending on the approach, whether it's like 100% or maybe like 80%, it's either a couple of minutes if it's like 80% to, maybe even like a couple of weeks if you want to have like 100% accurate copy. I think Keanu Reeves from Matrix, there was like a year ago, a very cool demo video of him being basically digital human, because they had like a promo marketing of the new Unreal Engine, which is like a game engine in general. So that's, for instance, the different approaches to avatars. When it comes to voice, you probably already also heard that it's kind of like easy today to clone someone else's voice.
Yes.
It's sometimes as scary as you just need like 30 seconds or 2 minutes of someone else's voice to actually get like a cloned voice version. So that's obviously the scary part. The, let's say, more realistic part. So also the speech generation engines in general, they also developed. So actually in today's world, we can create fake voices with different voice characteristics, meaning they can be very poetic, they can be, like almost like newscasts style of speaking. And you can actually, once again, control it almost with a slider of how you want your voice to sound. So if we, basically, if you want to just create like maybe digital human, not in someone's image, but maybe in a very specific image that we have in mind, which is aligned with a brand in terms of visuals and the voice that the avatar can use, then it's more or less doable in today's world. So that's the visual part. When it comes to, let's say, conversational part, that's probably also, I don't know, anyone that experimented with ChatGPT saw that it can kind of like mimic very cultural based kind of like ways of speaking. And what I mean by that, it's basically ChatGPT knows, for instance, what the Tolkien, stories are about, and it can basically, ChatGPT can use a voice similar to Tolkien's style of writing. So you can, once again, even when it comes to the content side, so text itself, it's also something that you can easily influence almost with a sliders, or just like as a simple prompt, meaning try to use like a Tolkien style whenever you generate your responses. So in today's world, basically you can control all the layers, so visual, voice, and content side in terms of like characteristic and personality. I know it was a simple question. I just wanted to put, as much, content or knowledge about the whole, spectrum of possibilities.
Yes, that's amazing, because as our listeners, we know exactly how it works and how it all look like. So if we're talking about your avatars, is there possibility to adjust avatars, for example, in the different ways? Like, I don't know, for example, I would like to create an avatar in some mystic way, like elves or something like that. Is that possible, or you only have like one model of the avatars?
So when it comes to Verb itself, we basically allow you to import any model. So we obviously have some built-in models predefined. but you can just select one of the one that you like. But regarding your question, and coming back, that it's in today's world, there's a lot of like different tools and software that you can use to create this kind of like avatars. Yes, you can create elves, you can create knights, you can create dragons, you can kind of like make even like for instance, a dragon speak using our technology. So basically, as long as you can find a tool, and regarding your question, I'm pretty sure that you can achieve like elves or anything like that in Character Creator or Das 3D. So those are tools that I know, a lot of game development studios use. Then yeah, you can create this kind of like model there. And then if you come to Virbe, basically you can import it and make it speak.
Okay. So that's great. And how did you came up with the idea for a startup like this? What was your inspiration?
Oh, that's a long story because the startup is 4-year old right now. Yeah, it's like I started in 2019. Started to actually gathering funds at the time. So we actually got like a proper money to build the product in 2020, right before the COVID started. So it was quite a challenge to build a platform and try to develop the business during the COVID times. Then eventually in 2022 we got like LT Capital. So as you can imagine, it's like 4 years now. And the first idea that actually started is like my background is it used to be like a software engineering, then product management, or more specifically technical product management. So I used to be like an interim CTO for others and so on. And also that was not my first venture, meaning I've built like one startup before and like done a small business during my studies. And this is eventually something that it's already there. So it's once you become an entrepreneur, or you already been an entrepreneur, but just you didn't know and just had it, you needed the right time and the right place to eventually develop those skills, then it's really hard to, forget about this part. So eventually I knew that I want to start another business. And 2019 was this moment where actually kind of like, my experiences from the contracts that I had, which were around, data science, virtual and augmented reality, a bit of chatbots and natural language processing in general. And I had just this kind of like moment, okay, actually, all I know about like software development and the tools that people use to develop apps and interfaces and processes and so on in a digital way, there is a very specific, place for eventually technology like that, my hypothesis was, okay, conversational AI at some point will develop enough so it will be useful. I had to wait for that until last year, until ChatGPT happened. Before ChatGPT happened, our business, well, it was running, but it wasn't running well. Now it's definitely a different story, a different game once ChatGPT helped basically also, empower our business, the core missing piece. And then, I just knew that there would be a moment in time where conversational AI will develop, and then we will have to start thinking about how to build interfaces, automated interfaces for others. And basically I thought chatbots are trying to, are aspiring to mimic humans. And if we think about those immersive devices like VR, AR, in general, any kind of like screen, this is a very natural interface to use, comparing to any kind of like layout with buttons, inputs, and so on. So each one of us is basically, since the birth, we are trying to learn how to speak, to communicate with another human being. That's also how we know how to communicate with digital beings in a way. So basically, this was this kind of like aha moment, and okay, I thought, okay, this makes sense. So the way we do develop apps in today's world, this is not perfect. This is definitely something that works, but it's not perfect. And eventually, I knew that it was kind of this feeling that the most natural way, or in maybe not all situations, but in certain situations like retail, hospitality, tourism, you can imagine all those industries which are heavily based on relationship or on a need for a human to human contact, that they will have to kind of like reimagine itself. Someone will have to think, okay, how to build better interface for human business interaction. And this was just the hypothesis that some sort of shift will happen, and that someone has to develop the technology that will enable this kind of like transformation. So it's like internet happened at some point, right? And certain people probably knew that the internet will happen, that there will be the people will be building websites and so on. And some people just were thinking, okay, so maybe we will build tools, so it's much more easier to build websites. So they have those WordPress frameworks. There is a lot of kind of like tools in today's world which are used basically to build better websites. So just to wrap it up, so basically Virbe is the similar way of the technology that you can use to build conversational experiences of the future.
Okay. You mentioned that your startup started working before the pandemic, and then as everyone knows, were a big lockdown. So, what was the challenges? What were the biggest challenges in running such a startup? Taking care that you started in pandemic. So, what was the biggest challenges?
Well, a couple of them. So, well, we got money before that happened. So I would say raising money during COVID, that would be a really nightmare, and probably something that, would result if a startup not ever making like a success. I would say, but, given that we had money and, the biggest challenge was actually probably, remote work, because remote work is like immediately something that we are used to, meeting sometimes and, building a culture. And I would say, for startup, it's really important to build a great culture early on, because this is something that you need to build, and then you need to kind of like, if you were to grow, if you happen to have a success at some point and you need to grow quickly, the better culture it is at the beginning, the more control over the culture you have in the long run, and the more stable company you can build, more or less. So I would say this was the challenge. So remote work, and we just couldn't meet with anyone, and it's like yeah, we started working online, but it's not the same. So that's one challenge. The other one was obviously building a business, because once the COVID started, more or less everyone panicked, and I'm speaking about the business side of the world. And it's also not the best time when you want to spend money. And we didn't have like a technology developed at the time yet. So which means people, maybe if we had something like this before COVID, maybe it would have found its solutions where you can have like a human to human interaction, but maybe you could have like a human to digital human interaction, but it was not yet developed at the time. So which means we were kind of like limited in the possibilities of doing business with potential customers and partners. And obviously that also means we were limited in the investors discussions that we can have, because if your business is not growing well, or something like that, then basically it's much more harder to, let's say, convince the investor to invest in such, let's say, innovative company, which is trying to disrupt the market in a way. But we were fortunate enough to kind of like keep doing the way we were doing until 2022. And that was the moment where LT Capital actually reached out to us that they want to invest, because they had to kind of like got the vision and understood the vision really well. And yeah, they basically trusted in my guts of that the company like this will have to have a success.
That's great story. That's I really liked listening to you, because you talk in very inspiring way. I don't know if you get it what I mean, but it's really nice to hear. So I have the last question for you. So what is your advice for all people who are listening to us and want to start their own startup? What is your advice for them?
Find yourself a really good partner. Well, I used to have like a co-founders, but during the COVID, I actually lost those co-founders. Priorities. It's everyone has a different story, so it's just there were no hard feelings, and we are still good friends. It's just I had to build this company more or less for the 4 years already alone, which is pretty hard in terms of like having someone in that can share your burden of building a business, some of the stresses, those like down days and so on. So finding yourself a good partner, and a lot of advisors and mentors, especially if that's your first time building a startup, because there's so many things that even if you perhaps you might read about them somewhere in the news, or maybe you can like you will read a book or about that or so. But it's a different story to actually experience something, to meet someone who not only probably knew the theory, but also kind of like been through those situations. So, and be very transparent with you. So it's like building a business is hard, and you just need to have a really right mentality to do so. I would say you have to be really stubborn to, you have your vision, you have your goal. It's really good if you have skills to achieve these goals, because if you can align those, then, and you are kind of like, you always kind of like think of a way to get to your goal. I would say that's a winning mindset 90% of time. It might not happen with the first business, like in my case it didn't, but eventually if it's like your second or third business and you find the right opportunity, right people around you that can help you, support your vision and growth in a smart way, then I would say that's a winning strategy at some point.
So thank you for your advice. Thank you for your time. That was a short but really interesting conversation. I hope that we can be able to hear something more about you in the future. So thank you for one more time for being our guest. Krzysztof Wróbel, CEO and founder of Virbe Startup, was here with me today. So thank you.
Thank you, Agata, for the invitation. It was a really interesting conversation. So yeah.
Thank you. Bye
Until
bye.
next time.